employee centricity is not an add-on. It is not a tick box item. It's verily a part of the organization's culture. So this transition from business to customers and customers to employees, in my opinion, is very lopsided. A holistic view would be to integrate all of these into the core of the organization.
We have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Shashank Shah today to our interview series. I'm Sumita Mariam from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, Dr. Shashank Shah is a stakeholder management strategist, researcher, and national best-selling author. He's authored over 100 research-based papers, articles, case studies, and technical notes in peer-reviewed national and international publications in the areas of stakeholder management, corporate responsibility, corporate governance, business ethics, integral education, humanized healthcare, and social entrepreneurship. He has been a visiting scholar at Harvard Business School and Copenhagen Business School, fellow and project director at Harvard University South Asia Institute, and is a consulting editor with the Business India Group. A TEDx and Talks at Google speaker, he has addressed scores of prominent platforms across academia and industry in India and the USA. Welcome, Shashank. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you, Smita.
Yes. So, moving on to the interview, the very first question I have for you. You've had quite a journey, and can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration? What keeps you going every step of the way?
Yeah, I keep getting asked that a lot. I think it goes back to my belief systems, and that have played a lot into the way I have done my research and all my writings as well. I've always believed that corporations have had a much larger role to play in the society than just wealth creation. Because given their access to resources, both financial resources and human resources, they have the potential to positively impact the economy and the society in more ways than one. While I agree that the factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, and enterprise, need to have their payments. As in, land needs to get rent, labor needs to get wages, capital needs to get invest, and enterprise, of course, needs to get profit. But there is a lot more that corporations can do while and after earning those profits. So that has been something that has been kind of my guiding mission statement. I've also seen over the decades that unfortunately most of the management literature post World War II, corporate strategies have been equated to warlike situations. So where destroying the competitor is the only way to exist. I think business management isn't a battle because human beings are the very core of the business. They are the ones who facilitate the business. They are the ones who collaborate in order to achieve the end goals of business. And hence, there is an opportunity, a phenomenal opportunity for corporations to create value for human beings within the organization and outside the organization. Now, how do we get insights into how this can be done? So I've looked at 2 things specifically. I've found insights in the ancient Indian literature. Of course, there it was focused on the role of a king and how he leveraged his position in order to contribute to societal well-being. But while he was contributing to societal well-being, the means were as important as the ends. Both were meant to be equally noble. In contemporary times, we can say that corporate leaders are like the kings of yore. And hence, there is a lot more they can do while they are making money, and a lot of it. Then I realized that this is not something which is limited to the ancient Indian literature. If one looks at the insights provided by the likes of Chanakya from India, Aristotle from Greece, and even Adam Smith, who is hailed as the father of economics, all of them have the common underlying theme that ethics and economics can coalesce and values and business can go together. In fact, this is a lesser known fact that historically Adam Smith had written a book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments over a dozen years before he wrote his book, his classic book, The Wealth of Nations, which has guided most of modern capitalist systems. If people would have given equal importance to both his works, corporations and economies would have done far better in creating value for themselves and society at large. So, over the last 15 years, as I gave you an overview of what has inspired me, I've also interacted with over 250 subject experts and industry captains in India, US, and Europe. And as a result of these interactions and my own research, my focus has predominantly been on how corporations can create economic and social value through three parameters. One is visionary leadership, second is stakeholder centric decision making, and third is inclusive business strategies. So that was kind of an overview to what my research has been. And now I think I have been inspired by some of these scholars and thought leaders in the field of business management, economics, and even history and philosophy.
Wow, that's wonderful. I mean, as you talk about what inspired you, we can see how grounded your beliefs are. So that's amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about your book, The Win-Win Corporations now? Is it related to all of these inspirations and beliefs that you have?
Yes, yes. So win-win corporations has got to do a lot with whatever I have just shared. In fact, I would like to mention about one of the professors who has also inspired me and my work. That's Professor Edward Freeman, who is a professor at the Darden School of Business in the University of Virginia. He's often hailed as the father of stakeholder theory. I also had an opportunity to meet him and interact with him. We had a 2 hour long conversation in 2013 when I had visited him in person. At that time, he shared something which was very inspiring. He said, profits for a corporation are like red blood cells to a human body. A human body cannot survive without red blood cells. Similarly, corporations cannot survive without making profits. But does the human body exist for making red blood cells? No. It exists for far larger purposes and a far broader vision. Similarly, to say that corporations exist only for profit making and wealth maximization is equivalent to saying that human beings exist for making red blood cells. The other thing, before I share about win-win corporations, is a book that has inspired me, and I would encourage practitioners and researchers alike to read that. It's called Built to Last. It's quite a famous book. It has been a New York Times bestseller. It was written by two authors, Collins and Porras, at the Stanford Research Institute. And they highlighted key characteristics of what made corporations successful in the long run. Say that in a way, win-win corporations has been inspired by that ideal, but it has been dovetailed to the Indian context. Now, why Indian context? Because I've taught at several business schools as a visiting faculty, and I've realized that most of the syllabi are filled with examples of global case studies. Now, all global case studies may not be relevant to the Indian context. So I realized that there is a gap of writing a book or doing research or even exploring more and more case studies that capture successful Indian corporations. In fact, most of the leading business schools and in my time at Harvard for over 3 years, I realized that Harvard has a phenomenal collection of Indian companies. The Tata Group alone has over 100 case studies that are taught in or rather 100 case studies on the Tata Group are taught in the leading business schools of the world. But how much of that are we doing in India? So I think I thought that was a gap which I could fill, and win-win corporations thereby focused on 6 companies. Now these were selected as a part of my research. It was an extension of my doctoral research in a way. So I had done primary survey, and from that I identified I had got responses from 325 companies, and then I shortlisted about 10. And finally, 6 were featured in the book. Which are those 6? HDFC Bank, Larsen and Toubro, Hindustan Unilever, Bharat Petroleum, Taj Group of Hotels, and TVS Motor Company. As you would see, they belong to diverse industries, they have diverse ownership patterns, and they also belong to different times in history, going back almost 14 decades. So you have very wide variety of contexts in which each of these companies operate. But a caveat is that they have done very well financially, because that's the first question people would ask. Where is the money? I want it now, and a lot of it. So one of the first things I mentioned in the first chapter is that these six companies gave 7x returns over a 20-year period when compared to the BSE Sensex. But we did more at a deeply strategic level. What is that? Now, often business schools teach business like a science through equations and economic concepts like zero sum game, where either party has to lose. So, what is the zero sum game? I win, you lose, you win, I lose. But business isn't a science, it deals with human beings. So, it needs to be inspired by other fields of study like psychology, like philosophy, history, and ethics. So, I believe that decision making, business decision making, can be win win. It need not be you at my cost, it did not be me at your cost. We both can win. And in win win corporations, I've captured how these organizations have created value for a broad set of stakeholders: customers, employees, supply chain partners, the natural environment, the local community and society, the government, and sometimes even the competitors. So, if you permit me, I can give you two or three examples from the book as
Yeah,
to how they did this win win bit as part of their strategic decision making.
yeah. Please do.
Yeah, so I'll give you three examples to show how win-win need not is not a fixed formula. It can emerge in several ways. For example, in the mid 1990s, HDFC Bank transformed its branches into sales and service outlets by implementing what was not very popular then, which was called core banking solutions. As a result of this, what happened? The drudgery of mundane work was shifted to a back office, so employees could do more proactive and creative kind of work. So benefited the employees. Customers got more involved participation when they went to branches, so it gave them more satisfaction. And of course, both of these together gave lot of money to the company, so the shareholders benefited. So it was not just a win-win; it was a win-win-win. Another example, this is of a public sector company like Bharat Petroleum. They were quite innovative and pioneered the introduction of smart cards, or what they called as a petro cards and fleet cards. And of course, it's a pure for sure campaign, which promised or assured the customers of the purity and surety of the quality and quantity of the petrol or diesel that is being inserted into the vehicle. So, what was the advantage? It gave phenomenal win-wins to in the commercial sense and also in convenient terms. In terms of convenience, it gave a lot of benefits to the retail consumers and even to the fleet owners. And commercial benefits were for the company because the sales went up dramatically. In fact, HPCL and Indian Oil were inspired by some of these initiatives, and they came up with their own brands of cards and even the similar pure for sure kind of assurance. It became a big differentiator in the energy industry, which continues till today. And the last example I'd like to give is of Larsen and Toubro. In 2003, the Aditya Birla Group divested its stake. It has sold its stake to L&T, which was about 10%, which they had interestingly acquired from Reliance under Dhirubhai Ambani. So what happened was the then chairman, Mr. Nayak, created an employees trust out of this stake that was sold by Birla. Now it was hailed as a grand win-win by national and international experts. How? One, because L&T prevented a takeover. There were three takeover attempts, by the way, for L&T. I've covered that in the book. Secondly, L&T divested a non-core business, its cement business, which was eventually bought over by the Birlas. And it strengthened the employee commitment towards the financial success of the company, because the employees became participants in the company's financial success story because they were given ESOPs. And Mr. Nayak recalled very fondly that I was given credit for transforming engineers into economists because every single day they were tracking the share prices in the newspapers of L&T. So it was a phenomenal win-win on all fronts. And between 2003, when L&T's market cap was 6,000 crores, to May 2019, which was last year, when the market cap rose to 2.5 lakh crores, L&T's value has amplified by 42 times. So
Wow.
some of these decisions are not connected with the stakeholders and the cost of the financial success of the company. At the same time, they just don't give financial success and exploit all the other stakeholders. So you see, it's possible, it is doable, and I'm giving you real examples of companies which you and I work with, study about, or even have benefited from their products, processes, or services.
Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, it's not hypothetical. It's not if company X did that, company Y would get this. It's real. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. And in fact, I've given 84 actionable ways on how companies and entrepreneurs and even startups can become win win corporations by focusing on 30 characteristics of what win win corporations are. So the book is very comprehensive. I've not just done what is a pie in the sky kind of analysis and very utopian, preachy kind of stuff. No, because the Gen Z and millennials, and I myself am one of a millennial, the first batch of millennials, want proof of the pudding. They don't want idealistic stuff. They're very idealistic, mind you, but they want implementable and instrumental idealism and not just utopian stuff.
Yeah.
And if you give them, they will take it and just move ahead. They will not just walk or jog, they will sprint.
Yeah, exactly. So that's very thoughtful of you to write something like that. I think we should recommend our audience also to read it, and understand.
Yeah, please do. It's available online both in Kindle and print formats.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, moving on to the next question. So let's shift our focus a little bit, and we would like to know your opinion on, or what is your take on organizations moving from, business centricity to then customer centricity, to the whole customer thing approach, to now employee centricity. What is your whole take on that?
Right. So, business centricity to customer centricity to employee centricity, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, from that, can I infer that by business centricity, all the while it meant centricity of money making and shareholder wealth maximization? I
Yeah.
mean, if that's what business centricity meant, it has not gone. It continues even today. I mean, the disproportionate focus on quarter to quarter returns continues to force corporate leaders to think only in the short term.
Yeah.
But by legal nature, as it's taught in Commerce 101, corporations have eternal life. Then why just worry about what will happen to the corporation in the next quarter instead of thinking, how can I make this company sustainably successful? So I think that's one of the first things that corporate leaders need to focus on and are increasingly focusing on, though they are still in the minority. But I think the conversation has begun in a very big way. And I'll share with you more as we progress in this interview of why that has happened. Moreover, I think customer centricity and employee centricity cannot be divorced from the core purpose of the corporation. After all firms exist to provide value to the customers, and the employees are meant to collaboratively help the company to achieve that end. So then to say that we are shifting from money making to customer centricity to employee centricity means two things. One is, if companies are making that kind of an explicit claim, one is that they are acknowledging that they weren't doing things correctly earlier. And second, we continue to make another mistake. Unlike B school lectures on marketing, HR, finance, which are linear, corporate decisions are not linear. Corporate decisions involve multiple functional areas, multiple stakeholders in every decision making. So a company cannot look at any stakeholder or any functional area in isolation. It has to balance all of this all the time. So I personally believe that employee centricity is important from day one, because employees are not resources to be optimized. they are assets that companies need to build on, because they are the core force of what makes a company exist. So I think sustainably successful organizations focus on and invest in employees right from the beginning. So one of the finest examples, and which is considered a gold standard in corporate India, is the Tata Group, and they have India's largest private sector employers with 7,25,000 employees, and they have one of their companies, Tata Steel, is celebrating 90 years of industrial harmony this decade, and too while operating in a Naxalite hotbed where 6,000 people have lost their lives in some form of Naxalite violence, and yet not a single person has been from the Tata Steel ecosystem. Why? Because right from the beginning, there has been an immense focus on employee well-being. It's not something which started now. Even under the British Raj years, they have had some of the best practices connected with employee welfare, whether it is in terms of the minimum working hours or gratuity or accident compensation or availability of pure drinking water or sanitary huts, or you name it, and the kind of things which didn't exist in the developed countries in the early 1900s were already in implementation in Tata Steel. Moreover, in 1920s, in post-World War I, when the steel industry in India suffered tremendously, and Tata Steel particularly, because they helped the British Raj in a very substantial measure in the manufacturing of steel for the railways for World War I. And what happened was, after the World War I was over, the British Raj opened up the market, and there was a lot of steel dumping from and as a result of that, Tata Steel suffered immense losses. And there were suggestions that Tata Steel should shut shop. But the Tata Steel founders and promoters were not willing to do that. And Dorabji Tata, the then chairman of Tata Steel, mortgaged his wife's jewelry in order to get a loan from the Imperial Bank of India, which is now the State Bank of India, to the tune of 1 crore rupees, so that he can pay wages to the labor force. So imagine mortgaging your wife's jewelry so that the labor force do not lose their wages. I mean, these are the kinds of priorities that Indian companies have given to their stakeholders. Another example, and I'll conclude this question with that. In the 1990s, Tata Steel was again going through a very tough time. But after liberalization, they were kind of the most expensive manufacturer of steel in the world. And they realized that they need to change the way they operate. And one of the key things they had to do was cut down their workforce, at least half it, from 80,000 to 40,000. And it was going to be very difficult for them to do. So they envisaged an employee separation scheme where they gave the employees who were given the opportunity to leave, the opportunity to earn their salary till their notional date of retirement. They gave them an opportunity to get medical insurance for them and their family for the lifetime, and continue to live in the quarters in Jamshedpur for 3 years till they find an alternative accommodation space for themselves. So the industry veteran said that either you have too much money or you have too little brains, because nobody gives these kind of separation schemes. Yeah. But Steel said, no, maybe that's an experiment we are doing. 15 years later, when Forbes came out with the top 10 best industrial decisions ever in the world, there was only one company from India which featured there, and that was Tata Steel, for laying off 40,000 employees in an extremely amicable way, and also turning around the company to become the least cost producer of steel and winning the Deming Prize, which is like the Nobel Prize in total quality. Wow. So employee centricity is not an add-on. It is not a tick box item. It's verily a part of the organization's culture. So this transition from business to customers and customers to employees, in my opinion, is very lopsided. A holistic view would be to integrate all of these into the core of the organization's functioning. At least that's the way I look at business, and I think leaders visionary leaders also look at business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, once you were telling about the example also, it makes a lot of sense all of a sudden. It's like a revelation, and it's not really it's gone from here to there. It's been always there. So yeah,
Right.
that makes a
Right,
lot of
and that
sense.
too in India. I mean, we are talking about India, which is considered kind of a third world country in those years, though we were not. So historically,
Yeah,
India contributed to 35% of global GDP for 1,500 years before we were colonized by several countries.
yeah,
So we were made a third world country, but even in those years, those decades, we've had some very fine practices.
yeah. Yeah, that's so right. And moving on to another of your book,
Right.
corporate as a social citizen. So, what is the correlation, according to you, between the success of an organization and its corporate social responsibility?
Right, right. I think you're referring to my book, Soulful Corporations, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Soulful Corporations was my first book. It's published by Springer. It's a little more academic and rigorously research based than a practitioner oriented book. But yet I have tried to be as action oriented as possible. It basically captures the essence of what is now popularly called corporate social responsibility,
Mhm.
because CSR is the very soul or the very purpose of an organization, because it enables companies to have an existential purpose. Just like a soul inspires an individual to have an existential purpose, similarly, CSR does a similar role. And moreover, CSR is not about charity and philanthropy. Unfortunately, today people look at, oh, CSR, okay, take this much of charity, or I'll write a check, and
Yeah.
you're done. No, it is about how companies do business while discharging their holistic responsibility towards the society. It starts right from the time of sourcing of raw materials. It is when you're manufacturing your product. How are you doing that? It is about how you're recruiting from the local human capital pool. It's about how you're discharging the pollutants into the environment while your manufacture is happening, what kind of packaging you're using, what kind of logistics facilities you're using till your product reaches the end consumer. All of this is as much a part of CSR as focusing on a cause like education, healthcare, women's empowerment, or rural development. So this is something which I believe what CSR is, and I have captured in great detail in Soulful Corporations, and have given perspectives both from the Oriental and Occidental antiquity. I also have emphasized that CSR hasn't originated in the West and recently imbibed in India. I've and There's another book by Pushpa Sundar. You may want to refer to it. She's done a very detailed study on this. But I built on a part of that with respect to the history of CSR. And if one were to look at ancient literature, one would realize that for several centuries, the merchant and trade guilds, which were called Mahajans, and Mahajans exist even today, related to specific trades and areas of business, would take up the responsibility of ensuring the well-being of the local community in which they are operating. And this was nothing to do with religions. There are examples of Muslim Mahajans taking care of Jain temples, and Hindu Mahaj taking care of Muslim women and children, and so many other things. So there was a lot of harmony in society which some of these things brought. Then you had that transition from the Mahajans, what is quote unquote quote social responsibility, to some of the Renaissance organizations which took up the responsibility in a way. From there, it went to business philanthropists who, through their personal wealth, focused on how they could contribute to the well being of the society. We see that even in the West. It happened in a big way in India in the late 1800s, early 1900s. From there, as corporations took on larger and larger proportion in the Indian scenario, it went towards the corporations as corporate philanthropy. From there, with an increasing socialistic focus of the government, the responsibility was passed on to the government because the taxation rates became so unmanageable that corporates had no money available for any kind of philanthropy. But after India's liberalization, that responsibility, what is called as social responsibilities, come back to the corporations to what is now famously the CSR legislation, which mandates that 2% of the profits after tax are spent for social welfare. I think the money part, that's the other thing I've highlighted both in soulful corporations and elsewhere. 2% is not about the money that will be available, because it comes to 20-25,000 crores over several causes. No, those 1,000 crore per cause is not going to solve the problems of education, healthcare, women's empowerment in India. But what it does is that it has taken the conversations around CSR to the world. And some of the finest thought leaders of corporate India are now talking about how they can solve problems of the society. So it has given a lot of idea related opportunities for resolving social issues. Second, it has also given corporations opportunity to gain brand benefits by directly investing in those areas. And a smart corporate can do that very effectively. Pharma companies can contribute to healthcare related causes. IT companies can contribute to education related causes. Construction companies can contribute to livelihood and skill development related causes. Manufacturing companies can contribute to rural development causes because they have their operations in areas closer to the rural population. So a lot of brand benefits can be derived and are being derived. For example, in recent times, you see Hindustan Unilever doing some phenomenal work with connected to healthcare, sanitation, and hygiene in the current COVID crisis. They derive a lot of brand benefits from that because they have a lot of products in that space. But they are also investing in it as a core focus of their organization. Another thing connected with HR, because you are a platform connected with people and leaders, I think corporations need to look at CSR like they looked at total quality management revolution. In the total quality management revolution, employees were a part of the process of how quality standards can be improved, how collective thinking, quality teams, and so many other things that formed a part of the quality revolution. Similarly, employees can be involved in a very big way in contributing to CSR. We have what is called social volunteering. But I often say that social volunteering can shift from hour based social volunteering to idea based social volunteering. Most of the time, we have volunteering as to these many hours per week or this many hours per month. Can we move to idea based social volunteering where it has to do with how many ideas people can give or how they can collectively ideate and come to a solution to the challenge that the company is trying to resolve? Also, it's not about the quantum of money. I'll give you the example of TVS Motor Company. TVS Motor Company's annual CSR budget is just 10 crore rupees. But they have catalyzed, they have used that as a catalytic process and had positively impacted 5,000 villages in the last 20 years. And it's on record. There's an entire book also that's written on the Srinivasan Services Trust, which is the CSR wing of TVS Motor and Sundaram Clayton companies. And 5,000 villages have been impacted in 5 states of India with an annual budget of just 10 crores, which is 10x more than the kind of impact that companies that have 50x more budget to TVS have been able to accomplish. So I think CSR is not about money, it is about ideas, it is about the transformative role that companies can play in the society, and it's also about how top leadership and employees can engage in very creative ways in order to solve social problems, just like they're adding commercial value to the economy.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's such a fresh perspective that you've given there. So that's amazing. And moving forward, the holistic approach to stakeholder management, right? So, what are the three most important stakeholders you focus on, and why would that be?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, a stakeholder management is not an add-on thing. You don't say, okay, after I reach a particular threshold of turnover, a market cap, I'll start focusing on stakeholders. No, it is from day one. It's basically about how you take decisions, balancing the interests of diverse stakeholders within your corporation. And I'd like to give a caveat before I answer your question. CSR is no longer utopian or normative. Uh, all the expert literature published in some of the best journals like Academy of Management the earlier arguments against stakeholders theory was that it is utopian, it is normative. But it is not just that, it is instrumental, it is implementable, and it is financial rewarding. And I am not saying this. This has been said by the Business Roundtable, which is among the most elite institutions of corporate leaders in USA. And in the last quarter of 2019, 200 CEOs of America's leading corporations at the Business Roundtable proposed a new purpose for the corporation. It was a 300 word statement, and that statement did not cover two or three like your question suggests. It covered five stakeholders that, according to those 200 corporate leaders of America, all CEOs, mind you, every corporation needs to focus on. For 20 years prior to that, the only stakeholder they believed in was shareholder and how companies should maximize the wealth for the shareholders. Now the same CEOs are saying, no, we need to focus on five: customers, employees, supply chain, communities, and long-term wealth creation for shareholders. So the entire focus has moved from one or two or three to five stakeholders whose interests companies need to focus on. And to that, in the Indian context, I will add three more. Natural environment, very vital in a country that is having 10 of the world's 20 most polluted cities in its own geography. The government, very important, because in India, corporations need to engage proactively with the government so that they can create win-win solutions, because business and bureaucracy have diverse priorities and a lot of engagement is required. Unlike America, which is extremely corporate focused and a very proactive proponent of the free market economy, India is still a mixed economy. So you need to engage with the government. And I would add even competitors, because in economies like India, vital industries like telecommunications and energy, which form the backbone of the existence of the country, lack of private sector competition can be disastrous. It can have deleterious effects on the economy and the end consumer. So corporations need to be sensitive even to their competitors in the larger interest of the corporations, larger interest of the economy. So I hope I've answered your question, and I can give you two examples. Companies that have done well, and stories are what always resonate with the viewers. And so I thought I'll share two examples. One is of Hindustan Unilever's Shakti project. I don't know whether you've heard about it. Have you heard about Shakti project?
No, I haven't.
You should look it up. It's a case study by some of the leading business schools of the world, uh, and also taught in Indian business schools now because the global business schools are teaching it. HUL Shakti project was basically a women's empowerment project wherein HUL trained women in rural India to become distributors of their products. It wasn't a social welfare project. They did not start with the objective of empowering women. They realized that there is a huge opportunity in the rural hinterland, which is the media dark region, where all their promotions and outreach and logistical channels are not able to create new markets. So they realized that if they want to reach those markets, they will have to engage with a new set of people.
Yeah.
They empowered women entrepreneurs in the rural areas with the skills to market and sell HUL products. And they also package them in much smaller sizes so that they are useful, because you and I can buy a 300, 400, 200 rupees shampoo bottle, but that's not the kind of money available with the rural population. So that's when the sachet revolution started. 1 rupee, 2 rupee sachets for the whole family. They can share and in alternation use. And similarly with toothpaste and soaps and several other things. So what was the outcomes of that? 80,000 women in 18 states of India became entrepreneurs and became what was called Shakti Ammas. The word Amma came in because the project started in Andhra Pradesh. And in South India, women are often referred to as Ammas, like Behan in North India. So Shakti Ammas, 80,000 Shakti Ammas in 18 states of India enabled them to reach out to 4 million rural households in 160,000 villages. So you see what a phenomenal win-win it has led to, and how several stakeholders have benefited. Employees have benefited, customers have benefited, economy has benefited, society has benefited, and of course, HUL has benefited because it has remained the number one FMCG company in the country by a large margin, huge margin. So this is a very good example. Another example is of Tanishq. You must be fond of jewelry. So that's a women's favorite brand, jewelry brand, Tanishq. It's a Titan brand, and Titan belongs to the Tata Group. Now, Tanishq realized that almost 10 years after commencing operations in early 2000s, Tanishq realized that the suppliers, or what are called as the artisans, the karigars, those who make jewelry pieces, were losing. It's a occupational hazard, has always been accepted as that. They were losing eyesight and had neuro problems with their hand and eye coordination because of the poor ergonomic situations in which they were working. So what Tanish thought was, why can't our suppliers also retire at 60 like our employees? Because the karigars were losing their eyesight and other things by their 40s, and then they were forced to work as watchmen in metro cities.
Yeah.
So they started what was called Karigar Parks and a Mr. Perfect program, where their Karigars were given air conditioned workspaces with uniforms, with insurance, with housing facilities, with ID cards, just like their counterparts in the IT and ITES industries sectors. And they were also given wholesome Bengali food and Bengali DVDs, and their families were welcome to come and stay them for a week or more, because they were all working in cities far away from their homes, and almost 60% of the karigars hail from Bengal. So as a result of that, they invested 20 crores in establishing Karigar parks, almost 10 of them for 1400 Karigars. And in fact, it was phenomenal because that and the process innovation they did in these Karigar parks led to reduction in wastage from 5% to 0.15%. That amounted to 75 kgs of gold saved in process loss per year.
Wow.
Imagine what that can do to a company like Tanish, a brand like Tanish, which today contributes 85% of Titan's revenue. And Titan today is Tata's second largest company by market cap. Last year, it had a market cap of 1 lakh crore.
Wow.
Importantly, the Karigars said when they were asked how do they feel about this project, and mind you, the Karigars are not employees of Titan; they are suppliers. So when they were asked how do they feel, they said, "Wow, I feel great. I'll now get better marriage prospects because I have more respect in society." So you see how human centricity, it's not business centricity, customer centricity, employee centricity, or CSR. It is human centricity, which is the core of business, because human beings are at the core of business. I think among the 6 M's of business, and I remember Prime Minister Modi had also shared this in the parliament, and I've also mentioned this several times, even before he's mentioned, maybe we've sourced it from the same source. He said of the 6 M's of business, M, men or human resources, give value to the other 5 M's, which is money, machine, methods, minutes, and material. The other 5 M's of business have no value without the human beings which give value to them. Unfortunately, we try to optimize the others at the cost of the core, which is human beings. So I would say human centricity is what is most important, whichever way you look at it.
Wow. Yeah, that's that last sentence is what, we can conclude all of this answer to that last sentence. So we've covered most of it, but still, how can we increase, according to you again, how can we increase the employee engagement and of course loyalty in an organization effectively? So we've covered a lot of it already with examples and everything right now, but if you can add a little bit more about it.
Sure. I think, I'm not someone who says that metrics are not good, or we should not be doing some of these things proactively and do it more heuristically. No, but we should not limit it to that, because employee engagement and loyalty is not an add-on or a metrics-based activity. Metrics are important because what gets measured gets done, right? That's what they're taught in business schools, and that is true. Whatever is put in your KRAs is what will be given first priority. But these need to be integrated into the organization culture. Because Professor Peter Drucker, one of the foremost management thought leaders of the last century, had very famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, culture is what is most important that will lead to all of these, including employee engagement and loyalty. And how can such an employee centric culture be built? That is a question that companies need to ask. It's not something that will happen overnight. It's something that needs to be invested in by the top leadership day in and day out, quarter in and quarter out, year in and year out, to build such an enabling culture which helps them achieve their broader vision and mission is going to be the core. And I'll give you an example of one company which I've covered in Win-Win Corporations and in Tata Group, and which is a very, very prominent brand of India, which is the Taj Group of Hotels. Mm-hmm. I'm covering them in the context of employee engagement and loyalty, because the employees of this company displayed loyalty by giving up their lives for the company. Yeah. We're all aware of the terror attacks on the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai in 26/11 and several other landmarks in Bombay that year. And in fact, I lost my neighbors in those terror attacks. They passed away in the attack in Oberoi Hotel, 2 kilometers from Taj. And in fact, my mother returned home just in time, within half an hour, just half an hour before the terrorists struck the Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus or the Victoria terminus in Bombay. She reached home in the cab, and the shooting started exactly at the same place where she was half an hour before. So I have some very poignant memories of the 26/11 attack. But what is unique that employee loyalty can lead to? Despite 1,800 people being inside the Taj Hotel that day, only 35 or 36 were killed in the attack. The casualties could have been 10 times more easily. And why did it happen? Why did that the casualties just remain at 30, 35? Because the employees formed human chains and nobody instructed them to do it. There was no training. You cannot train people on how to manage terror attacks, right? That's not even taught in business schools. That's not taught anywhere, because nobody is going to train you how to handle a terror attack situation. But they formed human chains and came in between the customers and the terrorists, because they were always, I'll come to that. And one more point, Karambir Kang, and I've interviewed him. Karambir Kang was the manager of the Taj Hotel, and he was leading from the front when his wife and daughter and 2 sons were getting asphyxiated in the 6th floor of the Taj Hotel, but he was not worried about how to get them out of the room. He was focused on how to lead so that the customers are saved. As many of the customers' lives can be saved, are saved. So why did this happen? And Raymond Dixon, the then MD of Tata of Taj Hotels, and Mr. Krishna Kumar, both of whom I have interviewed, he was the vice chairman of Taj Hotels. He said that is because the employees were always taught that Atithi Devo Bhava, the Indian philosophy, which is customer is God. So the employees were always made to believe that these customers who have come on our premises are like God come to our home. So we should do anything and everything to make them happy. And you cannot come to my home and kill my God when I am still around. So first you have to take my life before you can attack my God. So that is the kind of passion with which they saved these people. Secondly, what is important is, and there's a Harvard case study also on this, is that Taj has always believed in hiring for attitude, not for aptitude, because they believe that aptitudes and training can be given on campus, but attitude changing is very, very difficult. So they always look for people who are not looking for hopping jobs or not looking for trivial salary rises, but are looking at contributing to an institution, and that to Taj, which is now almost 120 years old. Moreover, as a organizational strategy, the employees are always told that they are the customers' ambassadors. Employees are not the company's ambassadors. Employees are customers' ambassadors. So they should do anything that it takes to make the customers happy. And any decision the employees take at work while they're dealing with customers, and you know how dynamic a hospitality service role can be, any decision the employees take which would have made the customers happy, everybody all the way to the CEO will back up the employee because they have taken it in the interest of the customer. So that kind of organizational culture and confidence needs to be created in the employees so that they feel that this is a company I would not mind giving my life for. And what did Taj do when they gave the life for the company? Today, under the COVID crisis, we see headlines of Ola and Uber and Swiggy and several of these companies laying off employees. Yeah. When their properties were closed, Taj did not retrench a single employee. In fact, they sent them to other properties so that they could improve their skills. Taj continued to pay the salary of the deceased employees till their notional date of retirement and the educational opportunity for their family members till they complete post graduation. And they ensured that they paid the healthcare expenses of the people who lost their lives or were injured on and around the Tata Taj properties. But everywhere else in Bombay, other companies may have said that that's not my job, that's the government's job because it's an attack on the state. It's not an attack on Taj alone. But they said, no, that's our gesture because we've received so much from society, we'll give back. And that further improves the employee loyalty. That even when I give my life, this company will take care of my family just like I would have if I was alive. So when you asked about employee engagement and loyalty, it is these kinds of things which will make their employees loyal. A slight rise in salary or a slight flashy employee title is only going to give temporary satisfaction because then you'll be looking for the next salary rise and the next flashy title. But it is feelings like these which really inspire employees to be loyal to a company. I have examples from so many companies, but given the shortage of time, I covered something which has several ramifications and several insights. I hope you found this relevant to your question.
Yeah, it is very relevant and very helpful actually. So, and that was a wonderful answer. So, Shashank, just to kind of wrap up the interview process, if you have any last important sound bites that you would like to leave our audience.
Yes. I think two things I would like to mention. I feel extremely uh, uh, what word should I use? Fulfilled, satisfied that in fact it's been 15 years since I've been researching, writing, talking about the area of stakeholders management. And this year, which is the 50th year of the World Economic Forum at Davos, the theme of the 50th anniversary of the World Economic Forum is stakeholder capitalism. How can capitalism be taken forward with a stakeholder mindset? As I've said, creating value for multiple stakeholders. So it's a validation of my opinion that, or a large set of scholars and researchers and authors' opinions that stakeholders management is the way if corporations want to survive and move towards the 22nd century. 22nd century, which means if we want to survive the next 80 years, we will need to look at inclusive and sustainable ways of success. Because I'm going to give you an important statistic here. Of the 100 large economies of the world, 69 are companies and 31 are countries. I repeat, of the 100 large economies of the world, 69 are companies and 31 are countries. So the importance of corporations and the way they do business is going to be far more than how governments rule their countries, because the resources and the size of corporation, the 100 largest economies, 69 are now, it could be 70 or more, are companies. And another startling fact is that we are not doing things right. The forest fires in the Amazon forest or the Australian bushfires, where 100 crore animals died, indicate that we are not doing things right. If we wish to survive as individuals, as institutions, as economies, as ecologies, and as a planet, we will have to balance interests of diverse stakeholders while we focus on financial success. And means will be as important as ends. That was always a message of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, that means are ends in the making. So that's the kind of focus corporations should have. And who is responsible for that? I think the leader of an organization, the leader of the SBU, the leader of the group at every level, the leader, his name is leader, but how was leadership looked at? It's the art of getting things done through others. No, the leader has to provide the vision. The leader has to create an enabling ecosystem and a culture which enables the people or his team members or his SBU members or the company at large or the conglomerate at large to achieve that vision. And the leader has to lead on that and walk the talk. I think these are the core ways in which we'll be able to make a difference as individuals, as corporations, as economy, and as a human civilization over the next 80 years for the 22nd century to arrive into this planet's existence. And I have shared lots of more ideas, anecdotes, insights on my social media handles. I'd like to encourage the viewers to go to them. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can connect with me. Dr. Shashank Shah is my identity on LinkedIn. I'm active on Twitter as well. Dr. Shashank J Shah is my Twitter handle. I have started uploading a lot of short video clips based on my talks and insights on different best practices connected with businesses on my YouTube channel. You can follow me there. It's again with the name Dr. Shashank Shah. Do connect, do give your feedback, do share your thoughts. It will be great to engage with you. And as Sumita said, all my books are available online, both in Kindle and print format. Whenever we are relieved of this lockdown, please do have a look and give me your feedback, because I'd be truly benefited from your thoughts. And let's make this world a better place to live in and make our lives more fulfilling.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and all of this energy for us, Shashank. I really appreciate your time, and it's been a it's been a totally enriching and learning experience for me personally, and I'm sure it is going to help a lot of our audience. So let's keep in touch and have a healthy and safe time ahead of you.
Thank you, Sumita. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and for initiating this conversation and for asking some very insightful questions. I'd like to thank you and your entire team and wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.